Daily Telegram.
Oh, we're going to start with breaking news. Well, I guess it's not really breaking news, but as long as we have everyone's attention now, Rosebud Lott and Gerald are going to be playing Thursday night instead of Friday night. Trying to avoid some bad weather Friday night. So those two Cougars are going to be playing Thursday night. Also playing Thursday night, Temple and Killeen Shoemaker in a District 12-6A match. We're talking about that. Belton Harker Heights in 12-6A and a whole bunch of other things. This is the Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast. I'm Josh Weaver. Greg Willie's over there. Greg, how are you?
Great, Josh. Thank you for asking.
Good. I'd like to ask everyone that tonight. Daniel, how are you?
You know, I'm here, and it's another good day.
Good. Marcus, how's your wrist? How's everything going?
That just sounds odd coming out of context like that. Hey, I'm doing great.
Old sports injury.
Old sports injury from days when the Telegram sports staff had 5 members on it,
Yes.
and we used to play pickup basketball.
Yep.
But
Now we just pick up our things and go home.
sometimes I'm over it, man.
We
I might not have
take
anything
our
else to
ball and go home.
Yes. Just leave.
I'm doing that now because I'll have nothing to contribute the rest of the night.
Sure you will. There'll be something. You brought Jolly Ranchers earlier in the week, so
Team
there'll be
MVP.
something. Yes. Greg, Temple, Shoemaker. The Wildcats looked pretty solid last week in beating Harker Heights. No reason why they shouldn't look as good. Coming up on Thursday night, a rare Thursday night for the Wildcats. They actually have 2 this year.
They do. They're going to get well acquainted with Leo Buckley Stadium, which they haven't played there in 3 years. They used to have to go over there for Thursday nights on a regular basis, but it's been a while. And this is also the first time Temple's had to hit the road this year. They've had 3 straight home games, which is pretty rare. They're going to hit the road, so they got Thursday night road game against Shoemaker. And, essentially on the paper, I mean, you would think this is an easy win for Temple, and it might be. You get Temple 3-0, 1-0 in district. They've outscored opponents 133-39, so that's pretty thorough. And coming off a shutout win over Harker Heights, 45-0, which was could have been worse if Temple had played their starters longer. Harker Heights is obviously having a down run this year, which is good news for Belton fans because that is who the Tigers have this week.
That's right.
But Shoemaker seems like the kind of team that I don't know. They're waiting for a breakthrough. It sounds like they're playing better football overall this year. They've got a second-year coach, Toby Foreman, who, Temple's coach Scott Stewart says this guy really has them playing sound football as far as how they're set up and devised their systems. And he says they have all the talent in the world in terms of just speed and good-looking athletes. It's like it just hasn't clicked in yet.
Yeah, and those thoughts on Coach Foreman and the Gray Wolves aren't uncommon.
Right.
I know other coaches in the district for sure are kind of feeling that same way about Shoemaker and their potential and a team that could really do some things once they put it all together.
Well, yeah, and I think there's some precedent there because Shoemaker had a nice 3-year run from 2013 to 15 when Shannon Hall was the coach there, and I mean he went to the playoffs 3 times, and this is actually kind of an interesting fact. Shoemaker's lost 23 straight games. Their last win was actually a playoff win, 2015, and then they lost in the area round the next week, and that began their losing streak.
Yeah.
So they've gone 0-10 2 straight years. They're off to an 0-2 start, but they won something like 21 games in a 3-year span with some really good players. And I think this guy sounds like he's the kind of coach. I mean, he took Beaumont Central to 4 straight playoff berths, and he actually, as a track and field coach, he won 3 state titles in a row at West Orange Stark before that. So this guy, I think he knows how to motivate kids. It's just the slow process of getting them to believe and getting enough good guys on the field to go beat a team like San Angelo Central or Midlothian or, in this case, Temple or Belton. So Temple's just hoping Shoemaker doesn't put it all together this week. And
Right.
They've only scored 7 points in each game so far. Shoemaker should be healthy and rested. They had a bye last week. They got to scout Temple. Those are some positives for Shoemaker, but when you look at what Temple's doing right now with Jared Wiley, Quentin Johnston, in the aerial game, you got Anthony Jackson, John Overton, just running wild. I mean, it's a tough offense to stop. The line is really good. And then you're seeing some other receivers start to emerge. Nathan Garcia, Montavian Carlisle. So, by the way, feature story subject, Montavian Carlisle, in Thursday's Telegram.
Yeah.
Shameless plug.
Sure.
But-
Everything's bumped up a day for Temple stuff
Yes.
this week.
Don't
since the
forget
early
Thursday
weekend.
night football.
Yeah.
Temple Shoemaker.
Yeah, and you meant, Temple's offense. You mentioned, I know last year most of these running backs, or all of them, were there
Yes.
last year.
Yes.
But I mean, you could tell the year difference, or the growth, or
yeah.
whatever, the experience that they
Yeah.
they gained playing last year.
I've got a
compared
stat
to
for
this
you
year.
guys. Anthony Jackson, Action Jackson, he's carried the ball 12 times this year in 3 games, which isn't very much.
Yeah. No.
He has 345 yards, so he's averaging 28.8 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns. It's not that they don't want to give it to him more, they just haven't had to.
Yeah.
And Deshaun Overton is a little more of a workhorse. They'll give it to him. He'll average 8 or 9 yards a carry, which is nothing to sneeze at. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's a pretty good tandem. And Jared Wiley at quarterback has the potential to be a very dangerous runner. They just haven't had to do that yet. But
Yeah.
when it comes into a tight game, maybe the Belton game, Midway, Colleen, I think you'll see them turn Wiley a little more loose in the running game.
Yeah.
6'6", 230 with speed is a tough
Yeah.
dude to bring down, but they're keeping him healthy for now.
Yeah, Temple's district slate definitely ramps up after their bye week for sure.
Yeah, they got some team called Belton coming in a couple of weeks, so apparently
Yeah.
that's a big game
That should be a big one.
in some circles.
We might touch on that a little bit
Okay.
later on. But I know you wrote in your notebook this week how Temple's not going to be taking Shoemaker lightly. I mean that just is a mistake in general,
Right.
and especially in this district. And you mentioned Harker Heights, and the Knights are 0-3, and I know that Belton is not going to be taking the Knights lightly this week. Especially going over there. That one's at Leo Buckley as well, Friday night. These two teams have played 16 times since Harker Heights opened in 2000, and Heights actually won that first game. And they won, I think it's 5 out of the first 7. But Belton has won 7 out of the last 9, including last year, 49-28. But, Coach Sam Skidmore over at Belton, what he's focused on right now is getting what the Tigers are doing cleaned up and tightened up. They were certainly happy to beat Copper's Cove last week, 35-28, but they were ahead 20-0 at one point in that one. And they turned the ball over 4 times, which put a damper on things in the rain. And a late field goal block, return, touchdown made it a little bit closer than it actually was probably, but Coach Skidmore kind of took into consideration that was just Belton's 3rd game of the year. They've done a lot of nice things so far, especially the last couple weeks, in beating Round Rock and then Cove. So the Tigers are just kind of looking at doing what they're doing better, going against Heights, which is going to have a big offensive line, I'm assuming, right? Did you see that? They have pretty decent size up there. They want to run the ball a little bit.
Definitely, if they have a strength offensively,
Yeah.
it's running. They have a couple
Yeah.
good-looking running backs,
Yeah.
but overall, just maybe not the caliber of athletes
Right.
we're used to seeing.
At least the last couple years, yeah.
Sophomore quarterback that isn't quite there yet,
Right.
but
Yeah.
they're breaking in, obviously.
Yeah. Offensively for Belton, those guys are just kind of still putting it together. I've been pretty impressed with Dean Blum-Monville and Marcus Aguilar. Those guys are very, one guy's, like I mentioned a couple, like last week, one guy's 6'5", the other guy's maybe 5'6". I don't know.
What's the name of the guy?
Yes, I know.
6'5"?
I say Blum-Monville, but I think it might be Blonmanville. It's a long last
I
name.
just like saying it as
Yes.
many times as possible.
It's like me and Daniel standing next to each other.
It is.
Pretty much.
Yeah. For those who can see us right now, which is just me and Greg.
Just,
But
just imagine
Yeah.
vastly different heights standing next to each
but
other.
what they do, I mean, it has been pretty impressive, and those guys are only going to get better. I've been pretty impressed with quarterback Connor Carruthers as well. He's had a couple turnovers in the first few games, but otherwise he's on track to surpass his numbers from last year, passing yards and touchdowns as well. Defensively, the numbers for Belton, and I've noticed this the last couple years, defensively it looks like they're just getting run over constantly, giving up a whole bunch of points, a whole bunch of yards. But when you see them live, that's not how it goes. That, they make a lot of big plays, timely plays, and sure, they might be giving up a good chunk of yardage here and there, but those numbers are kind of misleading. And Belton's defense has been playing pretty well. So I'm looking at Belton most likely going to 2-0 if they do everything they're supposed to go or do on Friday night, which would leave, and we're expecting Temple to probably be 2-0 heading into their bye.
And then Belton beating Shoemaker most likely the next.
Just kind of the way things are shaping up, and which means Belton and Temple are going to be meeting as undefeated in district in a couple weeks, which just kind of adds to it, right?
Build the hype.
Yeah.
And there will be more fans at that game than either one of these Leo Buckley Stadium games combined.
Yeah.
Especially probably on the home side.
Yeah. Well, even last year, that game at Wildcat Stadium. Belton. And people were still waiting to get in after the first quarter. That line stretched down the road.
Yeah, those Temple Belton games are always fun, and especially more when it's really, even if it's only midway through district, for the potential district championship kind of thing. So that'll be a fun one.
Oh, definitely.
Midway though is probably still saying, "Don't forget about us."
Oh, of course not. Yeah. You can't ever forget about Midway.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting note.
Yes.
Tidbit. Midway has not lost a district game since 2013 against Colleen Shoemaker, of all people. And that's funny. That was a huge upset at the time.
Sure.
And that actually gave Temple a share of a district championship because Temple went 6-1 that year. So anyway, end of tidbit.
No, it's good stuff.
That's why you played the game.
So those two games happening. Temple Thursday, Belton Friday. We mentioned Rosebud Lot and Gerald playing Thursday night. Also on tap around the area, Gatesville at Waco Connolly, Taylor at Salado, Florence is at Academy, Giddings at Cameron Yo, Rockdale at Austin Hyde Park, Hillsboro at Troy, Bosqueville at Rogers, Bruceville Eddy at Granger, Meridian at Moody, Holland at Crawford, Bartlett at Central Texas Christian, Round Rock Concordia at Buckholz, and Brian Allen at Holy Trinity Catholic. Some decent stuff on the docket this week. But let's throw it over to Daniel real quick. I know he's got the stat packet ready.
Oh, man.
So let's hear some names and numbers.
All right. Well, if you love stats like I do, now is your time for the podcast. You can go ahead and turn us off after this. No, just kidding. Stay with us. So let's see. So starting off, we'll look at the top area rushers from the past 3 weeks. We got Ryland Turner out of Central Texas Christian. He's got 637 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns on the season. A big reason why the Lions are 3-0 on the year. He's really got an interesting story. Another shameless plug. I got to follow after Greg. There's a feature coming in what'll be Friday's paper about Turner's kind of journey to Central Texas, to Temple specifically. He comes from Arkansas, and he decided that he wanted to just make the move down here, live with his grandparents. His grandpa is actually the defensive coordinator for the Lions, so it was a good fit. So be sure to look for that on Friday. It's going to be a pretty good story. I'm hoping. I still have to write it, so we'll see if it's any good, actually.
And he's playing Texas high school football now. No one ever talks about Arkansas high school football.
So it's
I'm sure it's halfway decent, but
he's
this is Texas. Okay.
He's glad to be here competing against the best. Moving on, Troy Zach Herbachik, the sophomore, he's got 483 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. He's off to a strong start. For Holy Trinity, Lane Dack. He's healthy this season. The Celtics are glad that he's been able to stay healthy. 431 yards, 5 touchdowns. Then Anthony Jackson, Action Jackson, I believe, is the new phrase we're going to use with him. Again, 12 carries on the season, 345 yards and 4 touchdowns. So,
what a slacker.
you it'll be hard to keep
Not
that.
fair using a hoverboard.
I know. You just can't.
And what's funny, if they actually found a way to get him 12 carries in a given game, he might have 345 yards.
He probably would be the first name I would list on this. We just to kind of put in perspective, those guys I've mentioned before, Turner 55 carries, or Herbacik 90 carries, Dak 35 carries. I mean, everyone on this list has at least what I'm looking at over 30 carries on the year, and Jackson comes in at number 4 with just a dozen. So just a little bit of perspective there.
We'll see if Herbacik can keep up that workload the whole year. 30 carries a game. It's like,
Yeah.
it's
For a sophomore. So
like Earl Campbell in the NFL. He's going to have to retire after like 5 years or something.
So hopefully he doesn't have to. It looks like Troy's kind of putting together a passing game. So, and then to kind of round out the top 5, Cameron Valdez out of Rockdale. He's got 317 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. So he's a big part of what that Rockdale offense does.
Yeah, he had 122, I think, last week in Rockdale's win over Lexington, which is a good top 10 battle, good win for the Tigers.
Yeah, one of the best games early on in the season by far. Moving on to your top passers in the area. As mentioned before, Jared Wiley for the Wildcats. 654 yards through the air, 11 touchdowns. He's the only quarterback in the area that has double-digit touchdowns on the season. So, he kind of moves that offense and helps them continue.
No interceptions either.
Man, that's 60 attempts, so that's not bad at all. Connor Carruthers, they're out of Belton, 569 yards, 7 touchdowns. Then kind of a surprising name out of Jarrell, Aaron Rodriguez. He's kind of proved here in his, I believe his junior season, he's kind of been one of the better dual threat quarterbacks in the area. He's got 517 yards passing, and then I believe he's got probably a little more than 150 yards on the ground, maybe closer to 160. So he's really kind of proven himself there. Riley Cosper, they're out of Troy, 370 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Zane Spinn, his first year at quarterback for the Holland Hornets, another 370 yards and 3 touchdowns. So some of your top passers in the area, just look to continue to those numbers, will be on the rise. And then the guys that benefit off of those passes, your top receivers through the first 3 weeks of the season. Quentin Johnson, you're going to hear time and time again. 12 catches for 365 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think that's the big number everyone's kind of thinking about.
And after that hot start, he's only started 3 games in his varsity career. He's a junior. It's kind of interesting. Duke was in the area to play Baylor over the weekend.
To beat Baylor.
To beat Baylor.
them.
That's what they came to do it, and they did.
Yes.
Duke had its wide receivers coach up in the press box watching the Temple Harker Heights game, kind of through the rain. He saw Quentin Johnston have another good game, 2 touchdowns, and 2 days later, I see Quentin Johnston announcing he has a scholarship offer from Duke. So that's not real surprising, and Duke will not be his only scholarship offer. He'll probably have a dozen plus by the end of this year, but at least academically, Duke would be a pretty nice place to go to school and get to play some football too, if he so chooses.
Yeah, well, if he keeps putting up numbers like this, like you said, he'll definitely have a lot more offers.
Yeah.
Moving on to Jarrell, Joseph Crathers. He's got 284 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns on the season. Brady Shelton, the do-it-all man for the Holland Hornets. He's got 268 yards, 3 touchdowns. Denver Holman out of Belton, 218 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then Tyler Lewis for Gatesville, 211 yards receiving and a touchdown on the year. So
I wanted to ask, last week we had feature stories on the front page. Denver Holman from Belton, Hunter Aviles from Temple.
Yeah.
I wonder who won the hair battle in that. Both guys were pretty. They had some serious flow.
Yeah,
and
2 different
length.
styles, but they both pulled it off pretty well.
yeah.
I don't know. We didn't do a poll on Twitter on the hairstyle.
Definitely one of our better centerpiece photos since I've been here, so didn't want to miss that. So those are your statistical leaders. Be sure to check back with us. We keep up to date with those every week, and don't miss them because we work hard to get them for you.
Yes, and just heads up to coaches and assistant coaches. Get us those stats ASAP on Friday nights, and if it's not Friday nights, as soon as possible on Saturdays, so we can get these in the paper as quickly as possible, because we do get phone calls.
Yes. We've been told that it is important for us to get kids' names in the paper. As strange as that may sound, apparently parents and family members want to see their kids' names. So.
Oh, and another thing is that if we pick against your team, it's not because we don't like you. It's
No.
we just pick who we think is going to win.
No, it's because, well, I don't even know if it's, sometimes my pen just...
Yeah, Josh just flips a coin or blindfolds himself
Yeah.
and throws darts
Yeah.
against the wall.
Right. Whichever pickle sticks on the wall the longest.
Those of us who might be trying to win this contest, we just pick who we think's going to win.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, is that the strategy?
For some.
It must not be if you're in the lead currently.
Yeah.
Hey, I've just been copying your answer. man.
I'm just trying to stay close as long as you can.
Right.
Well, speaking of picks, one that might be divided, possibly, we'll have to wait and see, is the Giddings-Yo game. That one's kind of sticking out, I think, among us this week. Giddings is 3-0. Yo's 2-0 after having that early bye. I think it's Cameron's third straight 4A opponent to start the year, which isn't necessarily unheard of for them to do. But Giddings beat Rockdale by 1 to open the year. So I mean, this looks like an interesting matchup on paper for sure.
Giddings, I think, easily beat Wimberley after
Yeah,
that. It was
yeah,
like
yeah.
state semifinalist or maybe
Something.
quarterfinalist
Yeah.
last year, and then
And then I think they doubled up Taylor or something last week. Yeah.
three pretty
Yeah,
solid wins.
yeah. Giddings' defense isn't giving up a whole bunch. I think like 14 points a game. But Yo looks like it's. I think they scored 34 of their 41 points in the second half last week to beat Gatesville.
I mean, that's on the road against
Yeah.
a good 4A opponent, and you're hanging 41 on them. That shows you Leo's got some explosiveness.
Yeah, multiple lightning delays. So
Yeah, 3 different quarterbacks too for Yo. That seems
yeah?
to be kind of
Kind of a thing.
a thing this year
Right.
at schools. I mean, at any level. I mean, Belton's even played a couple quarterbacks on a pretty consistent basis.
It's not the worst strategy in the
No.
world. I mean, you're getting that second guy some meaningful snaps
Yeah.
in case anything happens to the starter.
Yeah,
See, and Greg, you mentioned the getting scores, and you can take away from that they beat some quality opponents. But another way of looking at it is Giddings opened the season with Rockdale, beat him by a point, and as we discussed, Rockdale, of course, coming off a state championship. But in week 1, that was not the same Rockdale team, obviously.
No.
And if they had done that last week, yeah, I'd be a little bit more impressed.
Because remember,
Wimberley-
Rockdale didn't play very well early last season
Right.
either.
Yeah.
They ended up being a state
Right.
championship team. Yeah.
Wimberley's not the same Wimberley team. And then you look at Taylor, and I like Taylor, but Taylor also lost 41-21 to Robinson. And Troy beat Robinson last week. So, you can take away from that, yeah, those are some quality wins. Or you can take away from that, maybe these 3 teams aren't as strong as we think they should be. So,
Oh, I didn't say I was picking Giddings.
so
And
are
it-
you?
I'm
Because
just
I'm
saying-
about to make
I'm
my
just saying
picks.
They're a worthy adversary, but
No, I mean, I think it's going to be a great game. I'm probably going to go with Yo myself. And
this is their home opener.
Yeah, I was
right?
gonna say they're finally getting to
Long
play at
awaited
home.
Yeah.
opener. It's like the opposite of Temple and Belton finally
Yeah.
having to go on the road.
yeah.
So,
Well, Belton actually went on the road once. They just
Yes.
didn't get to play.
but you made the
On
drive
road.
down there.
I
so-
did. I was there. I was hanging out.
don't forget to turn in that mileage.
Oh, I did. I mean, I didn't forget. I turned it in.
But with Giddings, it's also just so hard to go 4-0 to start the season. I mean, you'll see teams start 2-0, 3-0 is impressive, but that's really where you see a lot of teams pick up that first loss of the season, that 4th game, right before district, or for some teams even the start of district or end of district. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to.
until Temple had.
That's true. Yeah.
Tidbit number 2. Temple is 3-0 for the first time since 2003.
Whoa.
Tam Hollingsed's first year with the Wildcats. And that's also the first year they were 4-0. Or the last time they went 4-0
Yeah.
to start a year. So that Temple's trying to get that. And
You got to get to 3-0
you
before
got
you
to
get
get
to
to
4-0.
3-0, which they are. And been a long time since Temple's had an undefeated regular season. You have to go back into the mid-'80s to find a 10-0 year. So that's still out there for them. A lot of good opponents between now and then.
Yeah.
We got to find a local sponsor to sponsor your tidbits, because that just sounds like something someone should sign up for.
Yep.
Sponsored tidbits.
You have our number.
Tidbits provided
Ask for
by.
advertising.
Anyway, there's some other good games on the docket. I mean, Hillsborough and Troy. Hillsborough's 2-1. Troy's 2-1. Holland at Crawford could be a good test to see.
Holland's
where Holland's
schedule,
at.
man, that's like,
Yeah, and I think that's obviously
yeah, we talked about that last week or a couple weeks ago when they were playing Mart.
It's going to be good for them.
It's interesting because, through their first 4 games, Holland, they start with Moody, which, isn't in the best situation. Then they play Mart, which is vastly better. Then they play Florence last week, which again is, just on the other side, not so great. And then Crawford. So it's interesting that they're really going low to high, week in and week out. But, ultimately it should just prepare them for a tough district schedule. I know they want to put together another long playoff run, so we'll see how that goes.
Has Salado played at home yet? I don't think the Eagles have been at home yet either, because they played at UMHB. And then where were they?
It's Travis. Right?
Yeah,
Then
last week. What about?
at Academy, right?
Yeah. So,
Salado's coming home.
yeah, finally getting to play.
Yeah, they're coming
when they're
alive,
home.
too.
Yeah. The offense looks like it's finding its form, and then the defense. I mean, Austin Travis, not a great team, but Salado held them to -1 total yards.
What was that? Say that
Last
one
week.
more time.
Dean Blonbonville. oh, -1.
The dean of area running backs. On a not really a joking matter, but just a game that sort of catches my eye for kind of another reason is Florence at Academy, which doesn't sound like the greatest of matchups. But one thing to look for, Academy is 0-3. This is their homecoming game, and Academy's had a rough week. They have a middle school athlete, an 8th grader named Aiden Martin, who died Tuesday after being in an ATV accident last Friday night. And so I think Academy, wanting to win your first game after a losing streak is always big. You always want to win your homecoming game, and then you've got an additional tragedy out there that, I'm sure there'll be some extra emotion that
Sure.
Academy is
emotions.
playing with, because he was a popular kid, a good athlete, who, no doubt would have been playing high school football the next several years. So anyway, that's just something to look out for. I think Academy might find a way to, play an inspired game and get its first win of the year.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
that's one of those things where, Greg and I, we've both been around here long enough to know how tight-knit a community Academy is. And really all of Bell County, I mean, like I was saying in the story from the volleyball match that night, the kids know each other in these towns, and they know each other pretty well. So it doesn't just affect Academy, but it affects kids from, other towns, Rogers even. If there's a big rivalry there, they know them, people in Temple know them. And that's just the thing. I mean, it's such a tight-knit community. They're going to come together and kind of rally around that. And it is a tough loss. And we've seen more than our share of them over the years here.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, athlete or otherwise, just,
Yeah.
a young kid
Yes.
in general.
My son is in the same class with that boy who died, so
Yes.
it's a tough deal when you see a kid that young
Yeah.
die long before he should have, with a lot of future ahead of him. So
Yeah.
it's tough on kids, teenagers, to deal with anything like that. So I'm sure Academy will play as well as it possibly can. And,
Yeah, and it's nice to see folks come together. I mean, not under these circumstances, but it's uplifting to see
we saw the Gerald
people
volleyball.
hoping Gerald volleyball,
Yeah.
and even last week with that Rockdale Lexington game, it was their childhood cancer awareness game.
Yes.
I know Lexington. Yeah, Lexington honored one of their students who's battling cancer, and Jeff Miller's son Gunnar has gone through that as well.
I remember
mean,
a few years back when Cameron in the playoffs was playing. I'm trying to remember the name of the town that had a kid in a house fire. His family had perished, or several family members, and Cameron raised a lot of money to donate to that family from somewhere down near the Victoria
Yeah, it
area.
was
I'm trying to
outside.
remember.
I can't remember.
Edna?
That sounds right,
Yeah.
but then
But
it
anyway, it
doesn't.
just showed you that, towns, especially I think small towns, they will pull together to help neighbors or opponents, whoever's in
Yeah.
need, and that's good to see stuff like
Yeah, definitely.
that. Even if the original stories were sad and unfortunate,
Right.
support goes out to them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, on that note, I think that will wrap it up for this week. Temple Day Telegram Sports Podcast. Enjoy the games. Probably bring an umbrella, or at least a coat with a hood,
Keep the
because
ball
it's
high and tight.
yeah, it's not looking great as far as the weather goes. But hopefully the rain or the lightning is really what we're worried about.
That's what
Hopefully
you're
that
gonna
kind of
watch out.
stays away and
Read the
have a good
paper.
time. Yeah, please read the paper.
Read the website.
Read the
Read
website.
the website.
You can read the website. It's fine. It's okay. Have a good night, everybody.